Welcome to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller, and my special guests from the Creative Recovery, Andrea Evans and John Entig. How you doing?
Good.
Good, yeah.
The last time you guys were here, you were just starting, and things were kicking off, and we had kickoff and all that stuff, and that was a couple months ago.
Has it been that long? Probably, yeah. Yeah.
It's been a little bit, but the things going well? Are they up to where you thought they were going to be? Are they?
Pretty much on track, yeah. You know, it's not something that we ever wanted to rush. It's something that kind of builds on itself.
Yeah.
So it's on track.
On track. The last time we were here, and I've gotten some feedback off of YouTube, you were actually a therapist. Is that correct?
Correct. I started out before I was a therapist with recovery housing. Before I actually got in as a therapist, that was in 2008 with the women's transitional program, faith-based women's transitional program, and I worked with that up until early 2016. But then in around 2010, I started with getting into behavioral health and clinical social work, psychology. Ended up completing my undergrad in psychology at The Ohio State University, and then went on to the College of Social Work there for my master's in social work. And then I worked for residential treatment facilities because in my young junior counselor mind, you know, that was where you really needed to be to address the issue we were having with addiction treatment, relapse rates, and then, you know, the prevention of addiction. But after 4 years in the dual diagnosis residential treatment facility, what jumped out was, you know, it doesn't matter what kind of treatment, what does matter, but, you know, you can have the best treatment in the world for 30 days when a person is in the residential setting, but where are you sending them out to after you're done? You know, if you're sending them back to the same environment that they were in, odds are you're going to see them again in a residential. So it was then, you know, I realized that there was a strong need to further develop our transitional housing programs, and not just what people call sober houses. A sober house is a place that's peer ran. There's usually clinical influence there, and, you know, they just have a roll on the wall somewhere that says no drugs and alcohol. And, you know, sometimes that works, but, you know, if people impacted by addiction could simply read directions and follow them properly, they wouldn't be an addict. So you have to really work on modeling behavior. You have to address what some of the core issues are. And you also have to provide a safe, sober environment for them to grow from. So it's kind of combining the things. So you really need, like, your, you know, the stages of a treatment. You would go like with your detox center, then residential treatment, and then your transitional housing with a partial hospitalization or intensive outpatient, and then outpatient services, and then maybe somebody's ready for a sober house, or maybe even ready to return back home and pick up where they left off. But recovery is a process, and as the person goes through these different stages, these different phases in that process, you know, they have to have good clinical supervision. So that's kind of my background. The Creative Recovery is the fourth transitional housing program I've been involved with developing.
And I know, and it was your idea to start one in Lancaster, Andrea. That's what.
Yes.
Yeah. Why? I mean.
Well, there was limited resources here, and you know, this is my community. This is where I reside. I grew up right down the street in Logan and Sugar Grove. So what better opportunity when it arose to come down and open it here, It's very needed. We've actually, since we've opened, we've had several people walk in asking for help, right off the street. So the fact that we're there and available at any point in time when they work, get that courage is huge. So.
And it's off Main Street, I remember 550?
551 East Main Street here in Lancaster. The recovery housing is in the front, and then the clinical offices are in the back. And additional parking's in the back as well.
Website, phone number, if people want to get?
614-404-6008. There's all kinds of information resources, www.thecreativerecovery.com. So they can get anything they need there or call us.
I did get another question about age limit. Is this for people over 18, or this is just men, right?
For the housing, it's just males.
Okay.
As far as the treatment portion, the outpatient treatment, it's males and females. And we do have females in our outpatient services. So
Age limit?
18 and over.
18 and over.
18 and over.
Did you expect when you got here and set this up, because we talked many times about the process, did you expect the response you've gotten already? Or was it more of, well, they may not come, I don't know.
Well, actually, in our line of work, a lot of times you get a lot of negative response. You get, we don't want somebody that has a history of drug and alcohol use living beside us. We don't want them in the community. Mm-hmm. And we haven't had any of that negative backlash as of yet. Mm-hmm. Everything that we've received is open arms and thank yous, and the feedback's been 100% supportive. So
that's great. That's good. I know you've got a big event. You've had several events, but you've got a major one coming up on the 19th. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's actually another one of Andrea's brainchilds there. So she invited her friend Maurice Claret to come to the event. It's called Insight. What we wanted to do was to bring treatment options to this area of Ohio. The typical response, in some of your rural areas is to go to the emergency room at the local hospital. And while certainly if there's an medical emergency, you should do that. But for most of your treatment addiction, you want a hospital that specializes in addiction. We network with over 24 hospitals, over a dozen in Central Ohio, and then some even out of state, that specialize in addiction. The biggest issue that we have is if someone goes to the emergency room and they get detox there, they get stabilized medically, then they won't meet criteria to get into one of the specialty hospitals. So if you're seeking long-term addiction treatment, go see a specialist. If you had a toothache, you wouldn't go see a foot doctor. He's a doctor, he can write you a pain pill for your toothache, but he can't pull it and fix the problem. So addiction hospitals, they're specialty hospitals. They don't have surgical units, they don't have x-ray units, they don't have a lot of the things that your regular hospital on the corner would have. But they do specialize in addiction. They have physicians there, nursing staffs, and they can handle the detox and the medically assisted treatment as needed. And they're professionals, that's all they do. Mm-hmm. So we want to bring some of those resources so that people understand that there are a multitude of treatment options and how to get connected with some of the options depending, there's a lot of variables in here, your type of insurance. Is there a co-occurring mental health issue? Is mental health the primary and substance use secondary? So there's a lot of things, but there's hospitals that specialize in all those different areas. And if you're going to go for good, solid treatment, continuum of care, instead of the revolving door,
Right.
then go see someone who's
Mm-hmm.
has the experience, the expertise to take care of the problem.
And this event coming up with Maurice Claret, and you might want to talk a little bit about your connection there and how you got this, because it's the 19th and it's going to at 6:30 at Logan High School.
Correct.
The 19th is a Thursday.
Yeah,
Talk
Thursday.
about your connection.
Well, John and I both had previously worked with Maurice. He has actually done wonderful things for the youth. He opened Red Zone in Youngstown. So we kind of got affiliated with him years ago through work. And he's just been a very close friend of both of ours for a while now.
In Hocking College.
Yeah, so he helps out Hocking College down there quite a bit in their athletic programs as far as anyone that may be struggling. His services are available there. And we help with that situation too, being that we're a little more local
Sure.
and available. But and as far as the event, so some of the treatment centers that John was speaking of, we invited several of these treatment centers down to the event, and they will have tables set up. We have personally worked with these treatment centers for years. We've toured them. We've met the staff, even down to the maintenance guys and the cooks. So
Yeah, we won't refer to a hospital we haven't walked the halls of.
Oh, okay.
I want to go walk the halls. I
Yeah.
want to see the room. I want to talk to the people, the clinicians. I want to understand what kind of care. A lot of times, especially when the family's involved, they're trusting us,
Sure.
to make the good decision. And so I don't feel comfortable just sending someone blindly somewhere.
Right.
I want to make sure that this is where we're going to send them to is a good fit for this person and what they have going on.
So the event, is it going to be a speaking event? How do we get tickets? Just show up at the door?
So it's free. It's open to all
Okay.
ages. You do not have to reside in Logan or Hocking County. That was just a big enough venue
Sure.
that could hold. It can hold up to 1,000 people.
Wow.
So I suggest coming early for a seat. And the anticipation seems to be quite large. But yeah, Maurice will come and speak, and then if time allows, he will be doing free autographs after.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, so he's very in support, and he's got a great story to tell. He has his own personal struggles with substance abuse, and of course, most people know him as the national championship from 2002 with the Buckeyes. So he was dealt a lot of things that some of the youth and some of the people in the community could probably take something out of it and relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you finding that more, because you work with the youth, you used to work with the youth a long time ago. Are you seeing more of a step away from the youth and it's more adults now? Or do you think youth are still involved in?
Absolutely, they are. Yeah, I think it's in any school. I think it's anyone. It doesn't discriminate. Some of the adults we get in, they picked up when they're 11, 12 years old. That hasn't changed in this generation. If anything, it's probably more available. Grandma's on, opiates, and the kids are getting access, or they're going in and not sure what it is, and they're taking it, and so yeah, I think it's probably worse.
I'd
now.
say 80% of the adults we deal with, especially with an opiate addiction, and even alcohol, they had accessed the pain pills from the family medicine cabinet first time. And the same thing with the alcohol. They accessed the alcohol in the family home for the first time. They steal mom and dad's liquor.
I can see the liquor just being there, but and this is just a general. Are doctors writing too many prescriptions? I mean, in your opinion, is it become? I mean, I was on for my heart problem, and I never had I was on some major antibiotics and things, and I never even wanted to do that. But Do you think there's just, oh yeah, I hurt my finger, or here you go? I mean,
You know, your doctor's job is to relieve the symptoms of your complaint, regardless of what the complaint is. You know, so if you go in and you're having high anxiety, his job is to reduce that anxiety. His training is in writing a prescription for benzodiazepine that'll reduce that anxiety. If you had a fever, he may prescribe you a high-dose aspirin. So doctors are doing their job in a large context. But there's also the overlooked fact of the euphoria associated with the opiates. They have such a high euphoria. You know, and for some people, you know, we firmly believe in the biopsychosocial model of addiction. Some people are just genetically predisposed. That euphoria they would get from a pain pill is 10 times greater than maybe the person sitting next to them. And a lot of that has to do with genetics. There's a lot of people who can drink alcohol but never become alcoholic. But for at least 7% of the population, once they have that first taste of alcohol, that euphoria from it is so great, then they become alcoholic.
And I do think too with the youth, you know, at this point, there's so many parents out there struggling with addiction and substance abuse that these kids are growing up in these homes thinking this is what's right. This is what we do.
They normalize the behavior. They don't, because that's how they see so much of it. They don't realize that that's not normal. If you were in another household, you wouldn't see that. And they underestimate the risk. As an undergrad at OSU, we were always having to do research projects. And one of them was on why would children who will report such a dysfunctional lifestyle from alcoholic parents become alcoholics themselves. Because they see firsthand and they live it, you know, how it's destroyed lives. Yet they go to college and they become alcoholic. And what we found was that they underestimate the risk that it'll happen to me. Just because it happened to you doesn't mean it's going to happen to me. I know better than to let it happen.
It's kind of like the teenager that goes out and decides to have sex for the first time. Well, I won't get pregnant. It's not going to happen to me. It's kind of the same mindset and thought process.
so where does the transition start? Elementary school, junior high? I mean, where do you start the programs that you've talked about, and how do you?
Well, it can begin anywhere. There's the world of addiction is never black and white. It's this big field of gray. There's so many variables in there. It can come early, it can come later, it can be for a multitude of factors. There's literally 1,000,001 reasons why a person became an addict. Once they are an addict, they're an addict. So, then it kind of gels together. But then as you branch out on the other side of the hospitalized treatment for it, then the recovery becomes just as diverse as the reasons that got them there.
Right.
But what we have learned, and this is, is it easier to teach someone 30 years old a foreign language, or is it easier to teach a 5-year-old a foreign language? And, it works on that same principle. Kids are easy to teach if they're given the proper lesson. So if we start teaching the kids, raising their awareness about, what addiction can do and the possibility that this could happen to you, there's no guarantee they're not going to go use. But at least they understand what they're getting into a little better.
So at that point, deciding that start with younger kids, is that the school's responsibility? Is that parents'
I think
responsibility?
it's the whole community. It's everyone's.
Yeah.
You know, from the school to the family. You know, I think that sheltering them is not always the best thing either. You know, because then when they are 21 or
Right.
18 heading off to college, you know, they won't know right from wrong and know the dangers of these things out here. You know, I have 2 teenage daughters, and you know, they're very aware of a lot of the dangers out there. But I hear often that the teenagers feel as though the alcohol or, you know, smoking weed is, you know, common knowledge with a lot of teenagers. But the problem is the addicts that come in are, you know, 20, 30 years old. They didn't go straight to a syringe filled with heroin. They started at that alcohol and smoking that weed, and it progressed. So as kids often think that, well, it's just weed or it's just a beer, that can easily turn into so much more.
Yeah, Mike, it's, you know, we've always heard about gateway drugs. And I don't necessarily believe in gateway drugs. I do think over the years, what I've learned is that there's a gateway effect. Kids, if you're under 18, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, all those things are illegal. But they all have a certain euphoria associated with them. So what's happened is the brain is telling the person, hey, this feels good. I like this. So they develop this behavioral pattern that breaking the rules feels good. And most of our people, young people, especially under the age of 25 who have addiction problems, also have a tendency for risky behaviors. They become hospitalized, they're thrill seekers, and they've taught their brain that, you know, this is...
I'm indestructible.
Yeah, I'm indestructible. It's fun to break the rules. So they'll begin breaking rules and taking risks just because of this internal reward. And then when you combine that with an addictive substance,
Sure.
We got a train wreck on the way.
That's so we've talked. Penalties need to be stiffer, or for, I mean,
That's another thing.
we've only got a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just roughly, you know, I think depending upon the consequences and or the acts, you know, varies. It's a very broad question, but I think jail alone is not the answer. You know, there's different severities of crime,
Sure.
so sometimes it is, but they need to go to treatment. They need to get counseling, you know.
I don't want to see addiction used as a defense for breaking the law, but at the same time, I've never seen this fear of a negative consequence keep somebody from using. What I have found keeps people from not using is having very good, realizable goals in life. And again, that starts young.
Right.
What is your potential? What is your self-worth about? And help them realize what their goals and form their goals. Because they know if I use, I'm not going to have this thing that's very important to me in the future.
Right, right. And that's part of what Maurice is going to talk about on the 19th. Again, that's October 19th, a Thursday, at Logan High School, 6:30. Try to get there early. No tickets are needed.
Nope, just come on in. Make sure you stop at the different tables to get information if you have a family or loved one that's struggling with active addiction. There would be lots of resources, so he'll tell his story and share it.
That's
And
neat.
even if you don't need the information today, you
Sure.
may in the future, you may know somebody.
Yeah.
So come on, at least get a pamphlet or some information. So if it ever does happen, you know who to call.
Creed Recovery, 551 East Main Street. Hours people can walk in, or do you have to make an appointment, or just?
We prefer appointment, but we're not going to turn anyone away.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
typically from 8 to 6. You know, but the best bet is to call and schedule an appointment.
Well, I tell you what, you're doing a great job, and it's going to grow. I mean, I mean, there are people I know because the feedback I got from the YouTube session we had last time that, you know, people call and say, ask them this, ask them that, and
Yeah.
my response is, well, just walk out there and ask. No, we do appreciate you coming in, Andrea and John. We do appreciate everything that you do and working, you know, trying to get this monster and you know, under control is the easiest way to say it, I guess. So, again, October 19th, Thursday, 6:30, Logan High School. Maurice Claret will be there from Ohio State. 2002. I didn't realize that was
Yeah.
that long ago. I didn't,
2002.
Yeah, but again, we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. Remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.